Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll just give it another minute to wait for people to get in and just give them another second. If you guys want to go ahead and send in the chat who you're watching with or anything like that, so we can all see who's here, because I know sometimes people watch with multiple people. So if you guys want to do that, that'd be cool. Hi, Madeline. Hi, Andrew. I like the shout outs. Okay. Cool. So I think we'll go ahead and just get started. We'll just let people continue coming in. But so yeah, just to get started like normal, my name's Lauren. I'm the Ig.nite intern if you don't know me. And I'm just super excited for this talk tonight. I think it's going to be really interesting, and it's definitely something that I don't know a ton about. So I'm excited to learn more. Yeah, and then to start, we're going to do our examen like we always do. So we're going to do the Ignatian examen for civic life, which is obviously connects with our topic today. So, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Begin with the prayer of gratitude. Consider current realities of our country. For what and for whom are you most grateful? Ask for God's guidance. Invite the Spirit of God to illuminate your reflections. Enlightened by the Spirit, prayerfully review our nation at this point in history. Allow your honest reactions, emotions, and desires to surface. What energizes you or brings you closer to God as you reflect on our country? What distracts you or makes you feel farther from God as you reflect on our country? What is the current situation of your brothers and sisters, particularly those who are most vulnerable and often marginalized by poverty and injustice? Consider perhaps one or two of the strongest desires or feelings evoked by your prayer about our country and bring this to God. What communities, groups, or aspects of creation in our nation need healing and reconciliation? What is God's desire for people who are marginalized by poverty and injustice? What areas of your life or our nation's life do you rejoice in and celebrate fidelity to gospel values? Listen with your heart. How is God present to you through your reactions and desires? As we prepare to elect new leaders, how will you promote the common good? Ask God for the assistance you need to enact the greater, more lasting good for all God's people. Is there a specific attitude you want to cultivate or an action you want to take? Entrust your desires and intentions to God's grace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, so before we have Paul, our speaker, come on, I just want to kind of touch on our Voting as an Act of Love campaign that our Faith Doing Justice intern Cecilia has been doing. So this Ignite talk is really the culmination of that campaign that she's been doing on our social media, which has been really awesome. I know we've had quite a few people watching it, so that's really cool. During that campaign, she's been talking about the Catholic social teachings. She's been talking about the 4 themes of Ignatian spirituality, which is discerning how Christ is active in our world, listening to marginalized people, having kinship with those people, and prayer. So yeah, I just kind of want to give a quick shout out to that, to Cecilia for doing such a great job of setting that up and doing it throughout this past week. And then we had Madeline, Will, Claire, Evan, Ryan, Neil, and Rose Carmel, all who helped out with that too. So we want to just thank them real quick. So throughout this talk, we're going to have Paul come on in just a second. So Paul, you can go ahead and request to speak, and I'll bring you in here in just a sec. So throughout the call, if you have any questions for Paul and you want to ask him while we're talking, you can go ahead and send your questions in the chat and I can bring those up to Paul and we can talk about those while we're talking. But we're also having an extended version of Ignite at the end of this. So I'm going to send out a Zoom link once we're wrapping up and you can all join that. And then you'll obviously have your videos on and you can talk to Paul. It'll be really low key. So you can just ask him any questions you want. I know he has some really cool stories to share and things like that. So if you want to hold your questions for that too, that's fine too. But like I said, while we're talking, you can definitely send messages in the chat if you want to. So yeah, so like Brian said, yeah, please feel free to send questions in the chat. And yeah, so Paul will be in here in just a second. But should be really good though. I'm really excited. Paul has just so much knowledge. We were practicing for this the other day and he's just has had so many experiences that are so great about talking about the election. And I know he's going to do a great job. So. Hello?
Yep, I'm working on it.
All right.
There we go.
There you go. Hi.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Lauren. Hi, everybody.
So to get us started, do you want to just give a quick introduction of yourself, maybe talk about what the Michigan Catholic Conference is and that sort of thing?
Sure. Well, so I'll start with, I guess, the more important or the less important, depending on the mood of the day. But the Michigan Catholic Conference was founded in 1963. It is the official public policy voice of the Catholic Church in Michigan. So it was founded by Cardinal Dearden, the Archbishop of Detroit, back in that year, right as Vatican II was in the middle of its council process. It represents the Catholic Church on legislative issues, primarily with the state legislature and Lansing, but we do assist the U.S. Bishops' Conference based in Washington, D.C. when the need arises, and take guidance from them as well. But the 7 bishops of Michigan are on the board of directors, which would include Bishop Boyer, the Bishop of Lansing. And I just remembered a funny story about Bishop Boyer. I knew him before he was named the Bishop of Lansing. Press conference, the press asked him, "So Bishop, your diocese covers both U of M and Michigan State, so where do your allegiances lie?" And he said, "Whoever beats Ohio State." So that speaks to the character of your bishop. I just wanted to point that out. So it's the 7 bishops, a priest, a nun, and 5 lay members who are on the board of directors. And they kind of give the marching orders, for lack of a better term, to us in terms of what we support and oppose in terms of legislation at the state capitol. I've been with the conference for 16 years. Prior to that, I was actually an employee of the Archdiocese of Detroit, living in Elma, where I still reside with my family. I was with the Michigan Catholic Rural Life Coalition. So I did a lot of advocacy and public speaking. I think I was at St. Mary's, in fact, at some point, maybe 10 years ago, to speak about eating as a moral act and the rights of farm workers and what's in our food and stewardship of creation and the like. So I've been with the church for 19 years now in one way or another. Prior to that, I was a small town city manager in northern Michigan. and I graduated from Michigan State. So I won't say go blue tonight, but I'll say go Catholic.
There we go.
And my family and I, as I said, live in Elma. I've got a daughter who's actually following in Brian's footsteps with the ECHO program through Notre Dame. She was a Spartan for undergraduate years. I've got a son and daughter at Grand Valley, and our youngest son is a sophomore at Elma High School. And my wife and I have been married 24 years now.
That's great. Okay. Thank you for giving that introduction. To get our conversation started, do you want to just kind of give like sort of a background, maybe talk about the separation of church and state? And
sure. And I probably should preface this by, I am not a priest. I am not a theologian. I'm not an attorney. So those are either three strikes against me or three positives as this conversation goes. So these are my reflections on the U.S. Bishops' Conference document called Faithful Citizenship, which has been out, I think, in one form or another since 1976. And so these would be my reflections and my take on how we are to be guided as Catholics and as citizens. And I thought the other day, Lauren, when talking with you, that I try and be a person of prayer. I enjoyed Father Mark's homily tonight very much about, it always seems like we're not praying enough. And I very rarely, even though I'm in the political field, I don't pray to be a good citizen. I pray to be a good person, a good husband, a good father. I want to be diligent in my work, but it doesn't really dawn on me to pray to be a good citizen. I'm trying to do better at that. I've just, in fact, had that revelation very, very recently. But I found in my professional career, and especially working with the church, and in particular speaking to Catholic audiences, there's a great hesitancy to get involved in politics or even to participate in a talk like this because politics is dirty and it's boring. Nobody should think it's boring anymore after the last 8, 10, 12 years, the last year for sure. But there seems to be a hesitancy to be involved, both because of squeamishness over the negativity that's out there. But I think more importantly, there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the separation of church and state. And we hear that phrase bandied about all the time, whether it's during a Supreme Court justice confirmation hearing process or in the media, one way or another. And Catholics are, I think, very susceptible to that because we traditionally were viewed as outsiders and still are by many, that our allegiance is to Rome and not to our homeland, our nation. And that phrase is usually brought up to imply that we are not to speak out based on our faith or to do anything because of our faith, when the contrary is actually true. The phrase separation of church and state or wall of separation does not appear in the Constitution. It is not in the Declaration of Independence. It was actually a phrase used by President Jefferson back in 1804 to the Baptists in Danbury, Connecticut, who were concerned about, is the new president going to honor our very short tradition at that point of letting us live our faith as we choose to do so? And he said that, again, he quoted from the Constitution. The very first amendment, the first sentence says that Congress shall pass no law regarding the establishment of a religion, and here's the key part, or the free exercise thereof, thus establishing a wall of separation. And somehow that 200 years later, that's like, you can't do a manger, you can't make the sign of the cross out in public or something. So free exercise is greater than the freedom to worship, which most people think is somewhere in the Constitution. Again, it's better than that. The free exercise of religion means we can go to Mass at St. Mary's. I can pray the rosary at home. I can pray outside an abortion clinic. I can protest the degradation of the environment because of my Catholic faith. And I think that's the very first thing, is we have to understand that we have the right to speak our minds, to speak our hearts, to speak our souls in the public square. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops says that voting and participation in politics is a moral obligation to Catholics, that it is a virtue. Pope Francis says that being involved in politics, and politics itself, in fact, is the highest form of charity. So this is despite the negativity we see out there every day now, politics is a noble calling, both for those who serve and those of us who are in electing people. Pope Francis says that the people in political power are there because we empower them. So we have a grave responsibility, and we have to exercise that as Catholics. I'm currently in the dining room of my mother and father-in-law down in Indiana. So I'm with you tonight from the Diocese of Fort Wayne, South Bend. And just last night, I read a quote from Bishop Kevin Rhodes here, who said that the problem in society today, in our politics, is that too many people view themselves as Democrats first and Catholics second. They also consider themselves, on the other extreme, Republicans first and Catholics second. There's no political party that fits the seamless government of life, or whatever you want to look at it. I call it the wide breadth of Catholic teaching. And it's the longer I do this kind of work and reflect and pray on this, the more proud I am of our church, because we speak out on everything, which can seem as a burden to be the representative. It can be overwhelming to us as the faithful that, there's just so much to know about our faith. Well, it's true, but it's great that it is, because we do speak on so many issues, and neither of the political parties, the two major parties in particular, speak to everything that we should believe and hold dear as Catholics.
Yeah, I really liked the point that you made about being involved in politics really being kind of like the highest act of charity that you can do, because we had a talk a couple weeks ago about Ignatian spirituality, and we talked about how you can find God in all things. And I think that, you can find God in all things, even in politics. And like we were saying, what better way to help the common good and to help the most people than by being involved in politics and like casting your vote and making an impact on everyone, really.
Right. And I think for most of you gathered tonight at St. Mary's, this is probably the first time that you voted in an election. If it's not the first time, it's probably the first time you voted in the presidential election. And I always reflect back when I was an undergrad at MSU, that I think a lot of people, when it's the first time to vote, and you ask them, what are your, if you just, Lauren, so for instance, what are your political thoughts? Or the answer that Paul would give would be, I think I'm a Democrat because my family's Democrat, or my grandparents would kill me if I voted Republican or Democrat, so I guess I'm a Republican. And I, in many cases, maybe not so much the last decade or so, but it really was amongst Catholic families that you were raised to be a Democrat as much as you were raised to be a Republican or a Catholic, because the Democratic Party seemed to favor the working class. At least that was the perception. And they were favorable to immigrants. And Catholics 100, 200, 300 years ago, we were an immigrant church. We still are. And we were a working class church. And it's an easy trap to fall into, that I am going to vote Republican because my parents are Republican. So I guess I'm one too, without giving it any logical, intellectual thought. But more importantly, without reflecting upon, my faith, this should be the central aspect of who I am. And that shouldn't stop with, okay, it's election day now, so I guess I'm not a Catholic anymore. How am I going to decide this? We can't vote based on what's best for me. Who's going to cut my taxes? I heard somebody on the radio the other day that, I won't mention the party or the candidate, but I guess I'm doing pretty good personally, so I guess I have to vote this way. Well, we need to vote for the common good and not our own self-interest. When the common good and our self-interest match, gosh, that's really nice, but that's not always the case. Voting is a very, very difficult thing, and the comments I'm going to make tonight are maybe more confusing than not, but I just want to get across to myself as well, because I'm still struggling how to vote. How do I weigh the issues? How do I weigh the candidates? What's really important? And I try and make a very, very serious decision, because it is serious business.
Yeah. So you talked about exactly that no candidate perfectly, I guess, embodies Catholic values. So I guess for students looking for sort of a way to think about and kind of evaluate the candidates and how to vote, I guess, what would you tell them? Because if there's no candidate who, perfectly embodies Catholic morals, I guess, like, how do they determine what values to weigh more than others? And
there's another fun top or phrase, the slippery slope. This is the slipperiest slope there is. So how do I weigh what's really important? Because there are so many issues. And the most difficult thing is, I can't really tell you what website to go to. The Catholic Church, we don't put out a voter guide in terms of, here are 6 good reasons to vote for this person, therefore vote for that person. The church doesn't endorse candidates. We give you the church gives us the issues and the things to ponder in our hearts. But to go to a candidate's website, you're going to find somebody that says, I'm a Wolverine grad, and okay, that tells you something. and I support Washtenaw County values, or in my part of the state, I'm pro mid-Michigan values or northern Michigan values. I don't know what that means, but you'll notice everybody says something like that. I'm a lifetime resident of Southeast Michigan, so therefore what? And most candidates, they don't really put too much clarity in what they say on the campaign trail or on their websites because they tend to not want to be held accountable. So it's very difficult, even if you know what's most important to you, Lauren. These are my top 3 things. Where do I find the answers to where the candidates are on those 3 things? That is very difficult. I don't know if you've passed out or had available at St. Mary's yet. Michigan Catholic Conference puts out a document called Focus, and our most recent issue is on the issues of the candidates and your vote. And it has, I think, 25 questions on the care for women and children, care for the environment, protecting the dignity of human life from conception to natural death, justice reform, education, the whole. It's a good resource in terms of things to think about before you vote. So there are lots of issues. The latest edition of Faithful Citizenship from the USCCB, U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, lists abortion as the preeminent issue, that the sacredness of human life has to be looked at first and foremost. But what the document also says, which is true, I'll get back to a good example in a moment. There are 2 temptations we can fall into, that we weigh 15 things a candidate says all equally, and well, I disagree with them on 3, so therefore that candidate wins my vote, 12-3. Treating everything equally, what's my stance on parking tickets versus abortion? There's just no comparison. On the other hand, the temptation to fall into is that this is my issue. It's care for the environment, and I'm going to ignore everything else because that's what's most important to me. Again, it's looking to the common good and the dignity of all human beings and the teachings of the faith. So that's not an answer. That's a long-winded essay, perhaps a verbal essay, but it's just difficult. There's no easy answer. But I'm always struck by a candidate who says that I'm personally opposed to something, and this is a phrase you've all heard. I'm personally opposed to abortion, but I'm not going to force. Again, this goes back to that fear of crossing that separation of church and state line. That I'm personally opposed to abortion, but to outlaw abortion would be facing my Catholic faith on my constituents, and I can't do that. I think to the Beatitudes, and I think to Matthew's Gospel, where we are to care for the prisoner and the widow and everything else. So I envision a candidate saying that, I'm against poverty. You probably saw in my brochure that I'm a Catholic, and I'm a member of Nativity Lord Parish in Elma, and I truly, sincerely follow my faith, and I hate poverty. But to pass a law that helps poor people find jobs, or to help them find food, or train them to be self-sustainable, I would be doing that as a Catholic. And I can't force my personal opinions on poverty on you, so I'm not going to do anything about ending poverty. I think there's a double standard when we do that. I think people would have greater respect. I certainly would if someone would just say, I'm against abortion. I think abortion is horrible, and we can't have it in our society, and here's what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to help women get better health care. I'm going to have tax credits for people to adopt their children if they can't care for them themselves. I'm going to eliminate every reason for someone to have an abortion because I believe that life is sacred. I would rather have somebody say that or say, I don't see a problem with it. I would rather have them say that than I'm personally opposed to poverty, but I can't do anything about it because that would be living out my Christian faith.
Definitely. Can you talk about maybe, because I think for me, and I'm sure for other people too, it can be kind of confusing where certain candidates will say they are for the dignity of life and respecting the dignity of life, and therefore they are anti-abortion, pro-choice, but then they support the death penalty and other things that kind of go against that. Can you maybe talk about just that and how you kind of sort through that?
It's confusing, and I'm baffled by that. And I again, the Catholic faith is wonderful because it's from Jesus. It's got a long tradition of great teaching from all the saints, and Ignatius I'll throw out there, of course, one of the great leaders of our faith. I value consistency, and I think as a Catholic we need to look at that. How do I justify that? Now, the death penalty in particular, we should take great honor those of us who are native Michiganders and all of us who are going to school now here. Michigan was the first English-speaking government. That's really a qualifier, but it's one we brag about anyway. The first English-speaking government in the world to ban the death penalty. So we've never had it here. The few executions that have taken place over Michigan's history have been violations of federal law, and it's been the federal government carrying out that sentence. That being said, you need to look at everything. We need to look at everything. And if you're voting for somebody, Paul, Lauren, and everybody else who's out there, we'll pick on Brian now. If you're voting for somebody who holds a position that is diametrically opposed to the teachings of the church that you yourself hold dear, if you vote for them, you need to make sure that you're voting for them in spite of that and for other reasons. And again, that's where you get into the slippery slope of, wow, how do I weigh the environment and care for women and tax credits for good schools? How do I weigh that against somebody who's not pro-life? On the other hand, how do I justify somebody who says they're pro-life, but they're against everything else I believe? Again, abortion's preeminent, but there are other things. And again, there's those two traps to fall into. You can't weigh everything equally. At the same point, you can't overlook everything. Exactly. Which is frustrating that the bishops don't just say, here's how to vote.
Yeah.
We have to really pray and think about this.
Right. So it's really about kind of taking into account what's important for you and your values and your morals, and then also just really looking at the whole candidate, not just certain issues, but kind of like the whole person too, I guess. Yeah. And then just a quick last question for you before we have Neil come on and share his thoughts. What are some resources that maybe you have or that you think students should check out if they want to learn more?
Well, you can go to usccb.org and you can get the full 40 some odd page Faithful Citizenship talk or document and all of its footnotes. I'm trying to save you time to do that, but there's a lot of great stuff in there. I just forwarded to you today, Lauren, a great article, I think from America Magazine, that had two former employees of the U.S. Bishops Conference who are struggling with the election, and one of them explains to justify his vote for Joe Biden for president. The other one is struggling to justify his vote for President Trump. I think that actually and that was just yesterday that I found that. I think that's a great thing to view and to look at. At my website, the website for the Catholic Conference, I should say, which is MI Catholic, so the letter M, letter I, Catholic.org, because yes, I am Catholic. So micatholic.org, there is a entire set of pages on voting resources, how to register to vote, and there's still time to do that. And not time to register to vote, but how to get an absentee ballot yet. The document that I referenced in terms of all the questions to ponder and how we should view the election as Catholics, there's resources there for the parish as well as what a parish can do and can't do in these remaining 2.5 weeks. That issue of focus, like I mentioned. And then I think just praying is the greatest thing. I think at this point, praying is the greatest thing. And I was struck by Father Mark's homily tonight about hoping for hope itself. I think we have to be people of prayer and pray for the candidates, pray for our nation, pray for the court, pray before we vote. And again, if there's a candidate that whether you voted for them or not, if they don't hold your views, again, I'm the first one to admit I don't do this as often as I should. Pray for them to have a change of heart. And if you're voting for somebody who is doing something or stands for something that you just cannot stomach, but yet you're voting for them for other reasons, hopefully you're voting grudgingly, you need to contact them and let them know that, I don't know that I can vote for you a second time unless you change this, and here's why. And I'm going to pray for an end to, destroying the environment, or I'm going to end to destroying human life. You need to stay involved in this as a faithful Catholic, a faithful citizen, the entire time, and not just, I'm going to pray really hard the day before the election, and I've been a faithful citizen, and I go off on my merry way. So this is an ongoing thing. The second thing I'll mention at the Michigan Catholic website is signing up for the Catholic Advocacy Network. It takes a minute to do that. Your name, your address, and your email. Most of you will probably use your Ann Arbor address, but if you use your home address, as long as it's in Michigan, it'll work. And you'll get a newsletter from us, a quick email every Friday that just says, here are the 5 things we worked on as a Catholic conference at the state capitol this week. And if nothing happened at the state capitol, you won't get an email that says nothing happened. So we try and limit the amount of email as much as possible. But our website's a great resource to see the different activities, as is the newsletter. And then if there's an issue that came out, like, God forbid that there is a bill introduced, which does happen on occasion, to have the death penalty in Michigan, we will send out a national alert that has a letter already addressed to your state representative and your state senator based on the address you give us. And it literally takes, I open my email, oh yes, I need to contact the legislature to vote against that. You hit click and a message goes to them. Legislators respond to their constituents. I'm always proud and honored to tell somebody that I represent 7 bishops, and I truly am honored to do that. I'm not 7 voters back home. So when somebody hears from 7 people back in the hometown, they really listen. And in many cases, if it's an issue that they just don't follow until the day it is to vote, I know for a fact they will ask their staff. So Lauren, Bill 500 today, that one's kind of controversial. What are we hearing from back home? Senator, we've had 2 emails saying vote no and 6 saying vote yes. Oh, I guess people want yes. We can't forget the impact that each of us has as a child of God, as a member of the church, as a citizen.
Right. I feel like we're really called to take that action too, and like live out our faith by taking those actions, like you said. And with that, it just makes it so easy to do it. How could you not? And I want to mention,
please sign up.
Yeah. Brian sent a few links in the chat. So if you guys are interested, the link that Brian just sent, the micatholic.org, is where you can sign up for the new newsletters that Paul has been talking about. And yeah, we definitely have resources at St. Mary that you can find for more things. I think we have like the focus that Paul was talking about. And there's another article link that Brian sent in there too. So you guys can check all of those out. I think we're going to have Neil join us now. So he should be coming in just a second, and he'll share his thoughts real quick with us.
So many project fillers. You kind of gave up on that.
Hi, Neil.
Hey, how's it going, Lauren?
Hey, Neil.
We're good. How are you?
Good. First of all, just, thank you so much, Paul, for taking the time to come and speak with us, describe your work, and give us a little bit of insight as to how we, as children of God and as people of faith, can have a little bit of direction in confusing times such as this. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Neil Jain. I'm a current junior here at the university studying international studies and business. I've been involved in Michigan state level politics for the past 3 years or so. I started off as an intern for State Representative Abdullah Hammoud. He's the representative from the 15th district, which is Dearborn, and currently intern for Oakland County Treasurer Andy Meisner, both of whom Paul actually knows and is familiar with. I want to highlight 3 things that Paul mentioned during his talk. First of all, neither party embodies all of what the church's teaching is. I've met wonderful people in politics from both sides of the aisle, but as Catholics, trying to search for the perfect option or the perfect alternative among the parties, in the meantime, that's unfortunately not going to be the case. So as Paul mentioned, we have to make those trade-offs on certain issues. And while we still believe that in having a consistent ethic of life, neither party, unfortunately, right now embodies that. So it's important to be able to make those trade-offs, but still, as much as possible, abide by Catholic social teaching. Which brings me to my second point, which is make your politics an expression of your faith. Abdullah, my first boss, is a practicing Muslim. Andy is Jewish, and I, as a Catholic, the 3 of us all represent the 3 major Abrahamic religions. But one piece of advice that they gave to me is make your politics an expression of your faith. Our faith calls us to care for the sick, to feed the hungry, to visit the imprisoned, to welcome the stranger. And in every single one of those is rooted in the belief that all people, all humans are imbibed with the dignity and image of God. So in everything you do, whether it's voting or volunteering or even, running for office or working in politics yourself, just make your politics an expression of your faith. Lastly, just kind of a practical action item, get involved in local politics, even if you don't want to work in it someday. Familiarize yourself with your city council people, your state representatives and state senators. The decisions made at the state, county, and local levels are the ones that impact people the most, whether your schools are funded, your roads are fixed, business and economic development. Every single one of those has such a huge tangible impact when it's conducted at the state, county, and local levels, especially life issues, anything having to do with healthcare, criminal justice reform, even immigration reform at the local level, sanctuary cities. Every single one of those is a life issue. So get involved in local politics. I can definitely attest to the fact that state legislatures, city council people, they're all very approachable. So be sure to get to know them.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you, Neil, for sharing your thoughts. I love how passionate you are about everything. It's so great to see. All right. Well, thank you both for coming on. I think we're kind of starting to run out of time, and I just have to do a couple wrap-up things. But thank you both for coming on, and we will see you at the extended edition Zoom afterwards.
Thanks,
bye.
everybody. Good to see you.
Okay, so we're just gonna wrap up with our closing prayer. So, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. In your loving heart, you made us. Each of us you made unique. But it was not good that we should be alone. So you placed us in community. You made a purpose for each of us to serve you. By serving our human family, and in turn to be protected and nurtured by it. You made us the body of Christ. You have taught us, your children, that we are called to be women and men for others, to walk with the excluded, to safeguard the abundant world you have made our common home, to call young people into a spirit of creativity and encounter where your voice can be heard, and to show others in the way we walk a pathway to God. As we reflect on our calling to help build a just and sustainable society where all this is possible, we humbly turn to you. Bless our bodies in strength and determination. Fill our hearts with the compassion of saints. Ordain our minds with wisdom and vision. Empower our spirits with faith and truth. Employ our hands to lay a lasting foundation to bless generations to come. Amen. All right, so just our last couple of things. Our discussion question for this week. So as usual, roommates or anybody you're watching this with that you want to talk to afterwards. The question is, how can you promote common good for all God's people? What are some tangible actions that you can take to promote common good for all people like we talked about? And then the challenge for the week is to sign the pledge. So like I said, this is really the ending of our Voting is an Act of Love campaign that Cecilia has been doing. So we have a pledge for you all to sign if you haven't already done it through the campaign that Cecilia's been doing. So we have that. I can pull up the link and send that in the chat. All right, I just sent the link for the pledge, so go and sign that. That's your challenge for the week. And then, we're going to continue from here to our extended edition of Ignite on Zoom. So Brian just sent the link in the chat, so you can go to that once we finish up here. And we'll have Paul and Neil there to keep talking with you, so you can come on, ask them any questions you have. Paul is just a wealth of knowledge, as is Neil. They both have some really cool stories to share and just a lot of knowledge that they can share with you if you have any questions. Obviously, we only hit on a couple topics in this talk, and there's literally so much you can talk about with this topic. So I really encourage you all to come into that and talk to them and get more questions answered. Or even if you don't have specific questions, you can come and just listen. We have a couple questions already planned to talk about too. So that's that. That's all we have for this week. Thank you all for coming. St. Ignatius, pray for us, and have a good week, everyone. Bye. See you in the Zoom.